play for me. Welcome in, Andy. Going solo. Noonan is out today. It's just me in today. Talking some Travelers, a little U.S. Open recap. Maybe a little Live Nashville. We got the Live event. We got LPGA event that I won't have time to bet on. But yes, we head to the Northeast after. God, if stop that. Did it just start playing another one? Something is amiss with StreamYard. So hopefully my voice is coming through strong. Yeah, and again, no Noonan today. So if you have any questions, I sure as shit will read them on the air in the chat. If you have trouble with doing that on Twitter, obviously we're on YouTube as well. A lot easier to get in the chat on the YouTube for sure. I don't think I want to go deep into the U.S. Open. I had a Bryson ticket, so I enjoyed the collapse. Obviously, anyone who's watched or talked or taken in any of my content knows I'm not a huge Rory guy, even though I've softened on that. So it was kind of a perfect Sunday, a perfect Father's Day for a Rory hater and a guy with a Bryson ticket. It was awesome. Matchups did pretty well for the full tournament stuff. Other than that, it was a great course. A lot of good discourse, a lot of good arguments on Twitter. The people who saw Rory's shot on the 5th, I believe, on Sunday, who wanted to make a big stink about it. Like, I don't know that somebody should hit a perfect shot, shouldn't be rewarded. I'm like, well, if it was a perfect shot, it would have stayed on the green because, there was a lot of confusing golf shots last week. I think people who watch golf and maybe don't play as much or don't play difficult courses, maybe were confused by some of the shots. And I thought the announcers did a really good job of explaining, like, hey, that's a 60-foot putt, but that's the only place you can put the ball. Like, you just can't go for the green from this distance. You can't go for the green. You can't pin seek from that part of the fairway. You can't attack this green today based on how it's going to play. Like, if you play a more aggressive shot, you're going to end up off the green. You're going to end up in the waist, in the collection area, 40 feet past the green as it rolls and rolls and rolls. So I thought the announcers did a good job of that, but I enjoy that. I like the tough golf. I think I called 6 under. I'm going to have to go back and watch last week's episode. I think we said it that we're going to end up 6 under, and it ended up 6 under. So congrats to Bryson. Congrats to Rory still. It's one of those things where once you have so much money, $2.2 million isn't enough to make you feel any better, I guess. So sorry, Roars, you'll get it. I guess the final piece to that puzzle, and again, back to the discourse online, is people getting really mad at him for not doing a post-conference presser. Fine with it. It sucks. Like, he's got 10 years of bottling majors now. That that had to stink. I did tweet this at someone I know here that I'm fine skipping the presser. I'm fine skipping a month of golf. Guys do this all the time. People, obviously maybe not the Travelers, which everyone loves, but like, oh, he's not playing Detroit or Rocket Mortgage, the John Deere. He wasn't going to play those anyway. Basically, he's just taking the Travelers off, getting his head right. He said so much. I don't love that he couldn't hang out in the, I don't know, whatever the room is in the clubhouse that you sign your scorecards in, where these famous photos are now, obviously circulating as memes. I wish he could have stayed in there for like 5 more minutes. I know it would have sucked, and that would have been an hour-long 5 minutes for him, but I wish he would have waited and just given Bryson just like a handshake. Like, everybody does that. You got to do that part. You don't have to do the presser. You don't have to play in Cromwell, but give Bryson some daps. Whatever. It is what it is. We'll forget about it. News cycle works fast. We're already on to the Travelers. If you caught the first, what do you want to call it? First look show on yesterday with Noonan, or if you've read the previews, I'm sure you're up to date a little, but short course. We won't go too deep into it because I don't have anyone to talk to but you. So not a lot of discussion, just me waxing poetic. TPC River Highlands is a short par 70. It's like 6,800 and change. It's the third shortest on tour. Tree lined parkland, like you're going to have in this area of the country. And it is, it's your standard 70. It's nothing goofy like you sometimes see on the DP. It is just, hey, we're getting rid of two par fives. So it is two par fives, four par fours, the rest are two par fives, four par threes, and the rest are par fours. Some water on 5 holes. That is one of your key defenses. You're going to have water as a defense. You're going to have a little bit of, not a little bit, rough. I mean, the 4-inch rough is obviously going to be a problem, and some wind. You can get some wind. Parts of the course are going to be tougher, especially some of the closing stretch. It is a good closing stretch, and there are some holes towards the end where it's a little more exposed. So sometimes you can get some wind exposure there. Obviously the 4-inch rough is a problem, has been a problem. It's still been a low-scoring course. Scores 15, 16, 18, 23 last year. So they did make some changes. We'll get into that a little before we get into stats and whatnot. But the par fours, and if you combine the par fours and par fives and average them, it's only an average of 432 per hole. That is the shortest combination. Again, we're starting with a 6,800-yard course, so kind of obvious there. Agronomy, bluegrass fescue rough, which is thick, problematic, tall. And then it is the bentgrass POA mix that you see over here. It's not the West Coast bumpy POA. It is the stuff we'll see over on this side of the country. So a little different. That's one of the things I enjoy about the rabbit hole on Betsperts Golf is we do have that filter. I did look at that for putting on this sort of greens, small greens, obviously 5,000 square feet and under, hard to find for some people. And again, they did make some changes. I'm going to actually just go right to Ron's notes. This is straight from the article he writes every week. So there were quotes. Everyone has the Rory quote from last year. He said it was, I believe the word was obsolete. I don't think it's obsolete. It was just still a good course. It is just easy. It is short. It's hard to have a sub 7,000 yard course nowadays with the advancements in technology, with the advancements some of these golfers are making in club head speed and strength, and just everything else we can do with tech to make us better golfers. So they did make some changes. It wasn't significant. I feel like this has been a theme lately. We did this with Colonial. We did this with Valhalla. We talked about changes. We said it isn't going to change how the course plays a ton. Honestly, I think these might, even though it was only on about 6 holes. So the big changes are some narrowed fairways because it is short, and you do want to, I guess, dissuade some of the golfers from just hitting piss missiles down there. So some of the spots, especially after 300 yards, they did tighten things up. They added some rough areas, and here is where I'm going to read directly from Ron's preview because it's just easier. So some of this is from Gary Young. He's the Senior Vice President of Rules and Competition for the PGA Tour. And again, from Ron's preview, the fairway at number 1, the 434-yard par 4, has been narrowed significantly, replaced with rough, particularly in the area where tee shots tend to settle on the left sides. Players will be required to be more precise with their tee shots. Again, we're going to probably look more at some total driving accuracy. And then again, back to the quote, with right-handed players likely needing to cut the ball back against a right to left slope. On the 9th hole, the par 4 dogleg right 9th hole was also altered by moving the tee box and changing the angle of the drive, bringing the tree line and the houses more into play. The heaviest hitters would often cut the dogleg off the tee and take a more direct route. Again, a quote from Young. He says, "I'm not saying they can't do it, but it will certainly be more difficult. There's certainly going to be have to take on a greater risk. We've also shrunk the size of the greens. So the other changes maybe a little smaller. Again, it's narrowing the fairway on the par 5, 6, a much smaller green on the very short par 3, the downhill 11th, a patch of rough replacing a section of fairway about 300 yards out on the par 4, 12th. And again, it's potentially taking driver out of the player's hands. Mounding added to the fairway, and fairway narrowed at the par 5, 13th. So the key, I guess, whatever feature they did for these changes is not really a renovation because it was small. It was only on a third of the holes. It was just narrowing in the fairways, which I guess makes sense for, what we saw last week. Although anyone who didn't have a Bryson ticket was probably a little chapped in the ass region about every time he would miss fairway, it would never end up in a bush. And Noonan and I went over this last week. We said, and there was even a really great picture of it I featured in the newsletter. We said, hey, some guys are going to miss the fairway, and they're going to end up behind a huge chunk of wiregrass or one of these other 75 native plants that is on this long list. And then there's going to be guys who miss by like 5 feet more, and they're going to be perched up on a nice little, nice little bunch of pine grass, pine straw, what have you, and things are going to be just hunky-dory for them. And man, golf is hard. Winning golf tournaments is hard. Sometimes it's luck, and I think a lot of that came into play for Bryson. When he was missing off the tee, he was missing into extremely advantageous areas, and them's the breaks sometimes. We've seen that, I believe it was a playoff a year or two ago where, it was Ricky's win. Ricky hit his damn ball into a puddle. It was a really offline tee shot. He was able to move it. Like, sometimes you miss so bad that it's not that bad, and you end up with a little bit of luck. I don't have a ton else on this. Everyone's here. The field, I don't really have to go over the field that much. Everyone's here except for Rory in the top 30. When someone drops out of a signature event, they don't replace them, which I don't love. I wish they would, I guess. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me. This is not a player-hosted signature event like we have with Genesis, API, Muirfield. So those are the only ones that we're going to end up with the cut line. We don't have the cut line here. It is just everyone sticks around for the whole week. You're going to be here for the whole week. So the field of 71, what have you now, everybody's here short of a withdrawal. So no cut line, nothing funny like that. Again, signature event, so there's a shitload of money. If you are playing one and done, you have the Open Championship, and you have obviously any part of the playoffs that is in your particular style of one and done. Those are big payments, but otherwise, this is the last signature event. This is the last big chunk of change. This is another one of those 20 million. So this is, again, a one and done spot. You do have to use somebody big. Key stats, like we talked about, I read a bunch of previews. I dug into Ron's stuff. I dug into my notes from last year. Low average driving distance here. It's gone up over the years, and I think, again, that was another part of why we ended up with some of these changes, because people had been taking driver more and more. So obviously with the narrower fairways, we may continue to see the increase of less than driver. The 4-inch rough obviously isn't helping that either. So it does rank in the top 10 for strokes lost missing the fairway, as far as being penal for when you do miss the fairway. So I'm going to look at some stats for less than driver courses. I'm going to look at total driving. I'm going to look at distance from the edge of the fairway. I'm going to look at driving accuracy. We've seen distance play here, but again, this is one where if you go back and look at former winners, there's been so many different kinds, so many different types. And I think for the most part, there's a lot of different theses that will play out here. You can win this course. You can beat this course a bunch of different ways. So I don't think there's a wrong answer. If you say, "Well, I think this kind of guy wins the tournament or plays well here, is a good DFS play," and somebody else says something else, I think it is one of those cases where, hey, you might both be right. There's a few different ways to beat this. See, hit your drives well, find these tiny greens, be really good with wedges. There's going to be a lot of short wedge play. Strong iron play is always crucial with the small greens. But again, there's so many shots that are going to be 125 to like 150, 175. Wedges, short iron control, greens in regulation. We're going to have to upweight that sort of stuff. Birdies are better on par fours. This is something I use this week just because that there's so many par fours. You do need to score on them. They're short, they're attackable. You need to be playing the smart game on these par fours. The threes are actually a little tough, and obviously the fives are kind of a leveling for everybody. But if you don't score on the fours, you're just not scoring because it's like 80% of the course. Course history, not huge here. Similar courses. Ron has listed Harbortown, Sawgrass, Pebble, Innisbrook, Colonial, Waialae, Sedgefield, Potomac, and Hamilton as his comp courses. I know a lot of people are using Deer Run and Colonial as heavy comp courses. I think that's fine. Pete Dye course, that is something I did build in. I used it a very small part. JH cashed in with Bryson last week. Can't wait for this week. It feels good. It does feel good to win, especially. I don't know. I'm a fatalist, and I've had so many second places, and it's always been in majors. I've had decent success in majors, but some of the biggest heartbreaks have been in majors, like the Louis Oosthuizen with the 2-stroke lead over Rahm, I believe, a few years back. That was painful. I've had some painful losses, so it was nice to be on the other end of that because Bryson didn't have his best game on Sunday. And obviously pulling that bunker shot out of his ass was really, really something. And I couldn't believe that when it happened, but it was nice to cash. So back to Travelers, kind of go over. I have oh no, it's behind me. That's not good. I got to get rid of myself. There we go. I've got my model I built. We did win last week. His computer took a little hiccup there. Hopefully, I did go over this a little. Well, I went over it in an article I haven't published yet, but um, the key Like maybe I'll just read it. So I did end up using Pete Dye stuff. Apologies for technical difficulties here. Total driving last 12 months, and that's a combination of distance and accuracy. And went with greens and regulation, which is pretty predictive at times. So I like to use that in a lot of my models. Use that a lot of stuff on the back end. I use that a lot in when I'm just looking at approach game models. Used birdies are better, and birdies are better on par fours. So I ended up using two different birdie or better metrics. Tried to downweight a little, but man, you do got to score here. It is a difficult spot. It's weird. It's a difficult course that gives up scoring because it's so short. So you do need to find those opportunities. You do need to score. And then, like I alluded to earlier, I love that the rabbit hole does allow you to look at the putting for this type of surface, this POA bent mix. So I put in, I think I needed a bigger samples because it's not something you play on a ton. And when I looked at a year, it was a pretty small sample. So I went back 2 years and I looked at bent POA putting. And we'll see if we can't end up sharing this without giving me too much grief this time. Here we go. I just want to go full screen. I don't even want me on there. Third, Xander, Colin, Harmon, Keegan, Corey, Sepp. And we're just going to completely remove this because every time I do that, it just locks stuff up for some reason. Needed to do a screenshot apparently. But regardless, like I said, it's a signature event. There's going to be some top names here. Odds, not great. We saw, once Rory dropped, we saw a little bit of bump especially for some of the top guys, but at the same time the odds weren't super high already. I've seen some people kind of trying to, I don't know, it's not catching a knife. I do worry about this, especially when it's a major. Like I've seen a bunch of people try to capitalize apparently off the success from the US Open, which is, I think, right and wrong. It's such a different ask here. And it's also a grind coming off the signature event into the major, playing a very tough course. And I don't know how some guys' mental states are going to be here, especially some of the guys who really played well. But I've seen a ton of people say, like, hey, it's Corey Connors week. Corey Connors obviously had a really good US Open. Hey, Cantlay, which, man, I think not only on here, but on the deep dive when I talked to Trench, we were very out on Cantlay. We just couldn't figure out why. Like the guy just hasn't played well. And then, lo and behold, he does kind of pull a really good tournament out of his ass, which is great. It's good golfers should play good golf. I couldn't figure out what's wrong with Cantlay. Obviously, he gained a bunch on the greens. That was helpful, but I'm going to kind of be digging in on that because he's 25-1 and suddenly he's got a little bit of confidence back. Obviously, Colin's been popular. I wish he'd a top 10. He is your third favorite. He's ahead of Ludwig at most places. So Scotty, Xander, Colin, Ludwig in that order for the most part. And then, the other ones, Akshay. I've seen people on Akshay. I get that. Straka, who's been strong. And Keegan. Keegan, who one year last year, and obviously plays well in these courses, is from the area. For my money, Hideki still being 30-1 in a spot like this is something that's interesting. I think I might end up with some Hideki. I'm a big Russell Henley guy. I don't think I can bet Russell Henley to win the tournament. That was my matchup in the newsletter. It was Henley versus Dustin Johnson, which was essentially just me betting more on Dustin Johnson to miss the cut. But Henley ended up having. I just said like Henley has to not miss the cut by a ton. He just has to be closer to the cut line. But he ended up having a really nice tournament. I don't think I can get down on 32-1 in a signature field to bet him. But obviously, I love him a lot. I'm going to look for him in some matchups. And then maybe further down the board, somebody I did look at was Denny McCarthy. I think that was a bit of the putting splits I looked at. He ended up a little higher. I have Henley 16th in my model. I feel like Hideki's going to be lower. Hideki is 19th. Some of the things that are pulling him down a little is total driving, but I think if we look at some shorter sample sizes, he'll be fine there. Actually, and a guy who struggled with a putter sometimes over the course of his career, obviously cleaned it up enough to win a major and win some other events, but he doesn't rank too poorly on putting on this type of surface. So Hideki is really interesting. I think that's somebody I'm using some bigger sample sizes. So Justin Thomas is 23rd. That was probably my biggest common sense. Don't trust stupid numbers play of last week when I run all my numbers for matchups, which, I put those in the Discord. I put some of them in the newsletters, but when I ran all my numbers for matchups, it really said like, hey, this is a good price on Justin Thomas over Patrick Cantlay. And I looked and looked and looked, and I just said, yeah, I can't do that, though. I don't think that's something I'm going to want to bet. And that would have been, I guess that would have been the worst bet I would have made in quite a while, as JT was, with one of the premium groups shooting 10 over. And obviously Cantlay ended up with a pretty nice finish. So he's another one that's going to pop here because I'm using smaller or larger, longer sample sizes back to, obviously he won a PGA a couple years back, but he's somebody I will be avoiding. Longer prices, a couple of sneaky ones. Poston is somebody I like maybe as a top 20 kind of bet. I'm not sure he's going to win at something like this, but he's another one that's like, if you go look at the Pete Dye splits, and I have, here, all the Pete Dye stats. Last 3 years, I said on all Pete Dye courses, Poston 7th in the field and just strokes gained total. So between that and he has a pretty high number on the putting on the bent / POA. He's something that's, probably interesting to bet placement, top X, whatever you want to have it. But 80-1 is probably not a big enough number for me to get on him. So I think my card as of right now is Hideki. And then I don't like betting small numbers, but small numbers come home sometimes. Ludwig at 15. Again, number one in my model, number one in my heart, guy I love to bet. And just his numbers, his total driving, just between that, his scoring, I'm not even worried about his putting. His putting is going to drag him down a little, but how he composed himself on a much tougher course with honestly a much tougher field. Hey, everyone's here except Bryson Brooks, Rahm, Jocko, Cam. Like there's still some big names. It's a signature event, but it's not everybody because of the live whatever have you. So tougher field last week. Tougher course. He composed himself pretty well, and his total driving numbers are obviously 6. So 15-1. Again, probably playing against Scotty. Scotty struggled, and that might just be a small blip on the radar. I have no idea how he bounces back, other than just go look at how he's played every course all year long outside of Pinehurst, and he should be just fine. So I do think Scotty bounces back, but still 4-1 in a full field event, or at least a 70-man field like this is still a little rough for my liking. So Ludwig, Hideki, Poston top 20. I'll have to get some quotes on that price, see where we're at. And then, looking again at my model, trying to find some guys. Corey Connors, number sucks. Probably can't do that. Wyndham Clark is going to be higher here again. Another one that just hasn't been playing great golf lately. But how do you predict weeks like Cantlay had? How do you say, like, guess what? Wyndham Clark's going to be better. Everybody talked about that last week with the catching the knives. Said, how are we gonna catch the knives? And I think the two were Rahm. Well, it was Rahm and Cantlay, to be fair. And I guess one of those knives was caught. And Rahm went back in the drawer. You didn't have to worry about him. So that's it for the card. Some notes on Nashville, just because I have been working on that, and I did start a little bit of a preview. I don't even think that'll be behind a paywall because it's live, and I'm not going to put, 400-word live previews behind a paywall. But I did look into Nashville. Let me look. I have my notes. I'm going to pull them up real quick. That doesn't start until Friday at the Grove in Nashville, Tennessee. Another weird scheduling blip is people are complaining about the signature events on either side of the major. We have live events too. I don't know why they felt the need to. I guess maybe we should give Greg and the gang over there in Saudi Arabia a little bit of some props on this. Maybe they hoped that Rahm, Brooks, Bryson would win, and they could just kind of build on that, because they better build on that. They better figure out how to get some people to watch the event. People don't watch these things. And man, they have the biggest star in the world. I have no idea on Rahm with his foot injury. Didn't look great. Obviously, he couldn't even put a shoe on, was letting that thing breathe. If he didn't play the U.S. Open, I'm not so sure he's going to rush back to play the Grove in Nashville. I don't know why I keep saying it like that. Par 71, 7,200 yards, same purse as always. This is the last U.S. stop until mid-August when we get back to the Greenbrier in West Virginia. Zoysia fairways, fast Bermuda greens. That is the only thing I've been able to find about this that looks hard. Is that these greens may play at a 12 or 13 stimp. It's not going to be like last week where we had fast greens with huge, runoff shaved areas. They're just going to be fast. So maybe a little hard to catch, but they don't look that small. It's harder to get information on these courses for the live events. So it's funny. This is a big part of what I've had to do to try to get any information on these courses is watching these YouTube golfers, like these guys who have these huge followings on YouTube. Just funny, the tie into Bryson. And they go out and just play these courses. So I watched like 40 minutes of a guy playing this course. And yeah, these guys are good at golf. Like, I'm sure he's damn near a scratch golfer. He was doing great, but there's still such a big difference between a scratch golfer and like Bryson or Cam, any of these guys that play on the live tour. I mean, he made this course look bad. He made it look easy. Anytime he screwed up was just like, oh, I mean, you're still an amateur golfer. Like, yeah, you hit a couple bunkers like that. Suddenly you have a longer par putt. But I mean, right off the bat, he had an eagle putt. These fives look super reachable. It did play. This is a course we've used in the past. So we do have a little bit of information, but it's not great information. It was used for a KFT event. So the Grove was used for like it's called the Simmons Bank Open. The other issue with that is they played it in September. So it is a little later in the summer. Course conditions might have been a little different. And again, they play 4 rounds on the KFT compared to live. So just for comparison's sake, last September they played it. The cut got to 3 under, and the winning score was 17 under, which, Grayson Murray, RIP. He won this event. They've played there a couple of years. I think it is moving to a different course. They've moved this around in different spots in Tennessee. But they did play there a couple of years. And again, I looked at, hole layouts. I looked at a few things. The only change they made was the second hole was a par 5, and it was one of the easiest holes. It was one of the scoringest holes every time. So that is why this is playing as 71 instead of a 72. They changed that. They just tightened up the tee box a little. Looks like they shortened it about 50 yards and then made it a par 4. So that will make it play a little tougher, I guess. But as far as the rest of it goes, it does not look tough. There's some man-made water hazards. There's a creek that goes through part of it, but it's still set up to be, it's a country club. It's a country club course that, again, these YouTube golfers made look pretty bad at times. The fairways are huge, and it does kind of just look like a very, very easy course for some of these top golfers. We're going to have a ton of scoring opportunities because a lot of the bunkering and a lot of the water hazards are just kind of not in the area that Bryson would land his ball. He's going to be looking backwards at him as he walks to find his ball. So I think scoring's be pretty low. And truthfully, when you run into a super easy course like this, it does invite the variance. As we saw, like, what does Pinehurst invite? Invited a great leaderboard with only the best. That's what we have. It's everyone but, Scotty, I guess. There were some other names that missed. But, when you do have a tough course, when you have a lot of challenges, it does separate the wheat from the chaff. And then when you end up with a birdie contest or, putting contest, which just might end up just being, it does end up with some longer prices, some weird names, some goofy players near the top. So I haven't looked at the prices for this. I'm guessing it's similar. That is the other thing about live golf is, for the most part, it's the same guys all the time. It's not, this one is the John Deere field and the Travelers field are going to look very different. Whereas like the live fields look the same every week. So it's always just Bryson, Rahm, Neiman, Brooks. Bryson, Neiman, Hatton's up a little higher now, but it's the same order of the top 5 or 6 guys every time. So I do have some odds up. Bryson 7-1, Neiman 11, Rahm 11. Who knows if he plays? Koepka 12, Hatton 12, Cam Smith 16. I'm going to run some numbers on this. I'm going to come up with a few longer outrights, but like Burmester 25-1 probably plays. I'm gonna look for some guys who are maybe some Bryson light. I'm not betting Matt Wolff. I don't think I can ever bet him again. But just thinking on some of these names, Mito Pereira 80-1. I feel like we're gonna get a weird winner in Nashville. So I will probably have 2 or 3, what have you, bombs, long shot tickets in Nashville. And I'll probably take some in because, again, it's a U.S. event and the timing isn't so weird. You just don't worry about like getting the CW app. Don't worry about it. Just find their YouTube channel. Seems to be the easiest stuff. It is a lot trickier if you are in like the UK or something. So, like I said, I'll have a preview up on the site and I'll have a couple of outright prices. That'll be free to read over Betspertsgolf.com. If you do want to make your own model, don't try to share it on the screen, I guess, because that grinded my poor computer to a halt. But if you do want to try to build your own model, check out our expert models. You can do that all for just $14.99 a week, $29.99 a month. Or I did like our Pinehurst promo, and some people took advantage of that. So I extended it with a different promo code, just promo code summertime, all one word. You can get a quarterly sub. That is 3 months, and we're going to make it 3 months for the price of 2. So just $60 using the promo code summertime. Normally that's $90. You get it for $60. The only rub is you do have to use a specific link to land on that promotional page that has the quarterly subscription because it's special just for the summer, just for you guys. I'll have the link in the description, in the show notes, if you do want to check that out. If you have any questions, you can DM us on Twitter. DMs are open at betspertsgolf.com. Don't take the .com, just at betspertsgolf, at AndyMSFW on Twitter, at PGA Splits 101. You can bug Ron as well. So if you have anything else, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, niblets, ideas, nuggets, anything, leave them in the comments. Hit us up on Twitter. We did it last week. I said, if Scotty, if you leave comments in this YouTube video, picking the winner, you only can pick one guy. If you get the right guy, I'll give you a code. I'll give you a free week. Even if you're already paying, you can just add that free week onto the end. I think it just extends you out. So even if you are a subscriber, you can leave a comment. So, and I'm not disqualifying anybody. Scotty's human again, remember? So you can pick Scotty Scheffler if you want, but just one guess. So leave it in the comments, hit the thumbs up. Appreciate you guys hanging with me, and we'll catch you next week. DFS show tomorrow, 1:15 ish, somewhere like that. See you guys.